Keeping your business healthy in today's marketplace can be a challenging and overwhelming task. From the threat of litigation inside and outside your organization and the inefficiencies that can rob your bottom line as a result of unproven marketing programs, the deck can be stacked against you. To get ahead of these challenges and stay ahead of your competition, the Bottled Business Sense Show provides practical business solutions that uniquely emphasize key legal principles, management techniques, and marketing strategies to protect and ensure the longevity of your business. You'll learn how to implement marketing and protection principles equal to those used by today's most successful corporations. Join your hosts Bill Bernard, Rick Moscoso, and Steve Smith for some high-energy discussion that will inspire you to take control of your business so it can prosper in today's consistently challenging business environment.
Well, good morning, everyone. Today is Tuesday at 10 o'clock here on the Bottled Business Sense Show. I am Rick Moscoso, one of your three co-hosts for this morning. I want to welcome all of our listeners and viewers back to the show. We have an interesting topic today, but before we get into that, for our new viewers out there, you can always reach out to us at bottlebusinesssenseshow@gmail.com if you're interested in hearing about new topics or want to be a guest on the show. You can also reach out to us on social media, on Google+, Twitter, Facebook. We're all over the place, so you can find us there. We are the Bottled Business Sense Show, and really what we are is we provide free value, free discussion about marketing, legal, and business aspects to help you be more prosperous in your business. And the three of us enjoy doing that. We speak from a lot of experience, and without any further ado, let me just get into introducing my two co-hosts, Mr. Steve Smith and Mr. Bill Bernard. How are you guys doing today?
Doing wonderful. Always nice to be on the show, man.
Yep, Good Friday, a little casual today, a little bit of a holiday, quit early, and we're enjoying the upcoming weekend, and we've got a interesting show here today. It's entitled "Healthy Relationships for Business Success," and there's certain relationships you got to have in business, and we all know that. But what kind of relationships we need to make our business successful that directly impinge upon our business? That's really important. So we thought we'd address that topic today with Steve and Rick. And there may be some legal issues that intertwine there, especially when we get into some specific types of relationships. And if so, I'm happy to comment. But Steve, why don't you lead us off? I know this is something near and dear to your heart. So, I mean, when we think about relationships in business, other than the typical boss-employee relationship, what should we be thinking about other than that initial relationship?
Well, I think let's set a kind of a watchword for people to think about, and when the show's over, to walk away with thinking about. A big part of the struggle with having a business is achieving some type of manageable balance. And the balance usually is between your business life and your home life. And in each one of those lives, we have multiple types of relationships that we can engage. We don't always go as deep with every one of them, but depending on what the relationships are and depending on how well they're running, how healthy they are at the time, certainly will have an impact on how you maintain your focus and how you're able to run your business effectively, because let's face it, relationships that are good will tend to energize you and make you feel good, and certainly do positive things for you. Relationships that are kind of maybe on the rocks or a little tense, it causes your mindset to basically fragment. You're thinking about that while you're trying to do business. So that's the thing I try to get people to recognize is you have to really manage the relationships so that you can either support the business or figure out a way to get away from them so you don't detract from the business.
So what comes first typically? Telling a client telling a client about the kind of relationships they need to recognize from day one. I mean, how do you categorize those relationships, for example?
Well, one of the things that I have, a tool that I have at my disposal, is this thing called a spider graph. and it measures how you feel you're doing in 8 different sectors of your life. And so when it comes to what we're talking about today, family and romantic relationships and other business relationships would certainly fall into this category. And so a lot of times it's really just a question of just initially sizing them up and saying, okay, how are these relationships affecting you? Everything good at home, everything good in your business. What's getting in the way that's causing you to maybe have your focus fragmented because it's relationship based?
And this is something that someone can do in conjunction with speaking to a professional like yourself without the need of any kind of deep psychological probing, I take it. I mean, we're not talking about before you start your business, you have to go to a shrink and figure out all this stuff, right? This is something basic that somebody with an objective view of the business can pinpoint, right?
Yes, usually, and I'll say it with this caveat: if you're evaluating your relationships and everything is fairly even keeled, meaning you don't have any real major problems, you have an impending divorce, or maybe you have a business partner that's getting ready to sue you for something you did in the business. Those things are weighty issues. Okay, so if you don't have any of that on the horizon, then it's not difficult to sit there and just say, okay, let me evaluate the relationships that I have to make sure that they're going in the right direction, they're beneficial to me as well as the other person, and they're not creating a drag on my ability to run my business.
Hey, Steve, so tell us a little bit about that spider graph that you had mentioned. How detailed do you get in that assessment?
It's really not a detailed diagnostic. Okay, it's not designed to go deep into your psyche and figure out, if you can't hold on to a romantic connection, why that is. Really, what it's designed to do is look at what I consider the 8 fundamental areas that make up your whole life. Okay, and so you, as the participant to that, would evaluate how you're doing, maybe from a spiritual standpoint, from a physical standpoint, from a financial standpoint. You go around the wheel and you evaluate yourself 1 to 10. 10's perfect. You couldn't possibly do any better. You're living the life. 1, you're totally in the crapper. And so you figure out where you are on the scale, and then after you look at the shape that gets drawn as a result of the numbers you put there, then you start figuring out where to apply your time and your attention. So not everything in your life is going to require your immediate attention. But if your health isn't good, your physical aspect isn't good, that may be something that you decide to put some focus on and set some reasonable goals to try to bring the number up, because you guys know as well as I do that running a business is hard work and it's taxing on your body physically as well as your head. So if your body isn't in good shape, that's one asset that's not working for you.
Well, now, who is it that devised these categories, Steve? In other words, who is the so-called, I'm assuming there was an expert of some kind that came up with these categories and decided this is the stuff you have to really look at to make sure your business relationships are going to be working?
No, it really wasn't any doctor or scientist or psychologist or anything like that. In fact, I got this graph from a guy that mentors me, a guy that's very, very successful in his business, and he has gone through a lot of development of his own. And so he was the one that actually put this thing together and basically mapped out these areas that, at least from his own experience, were things that they could either help you or they could hold you back.
Mm-hmm. And what are some of those categories then? We probably should discuss exactly what some of those are.
Like I said, you've got financial, you've got your business, your occupation, mm-hmm. You've got spiritual, you've got physical, you've got family, you've got leisure. Let's see, I think relational was one in there, because that's not just the family, that might be you and the spouse or you and some other love interest.
Right.
And there was the last one in there, I don't recall, but that's basically what it was designed to do. But what it helps you do is a really quick snapshot. It helps you look at the whole spectrum of your life and say, okay, what things aren't serving me well right now? Where should I be focusing my attention? If I'm making good money, if I'm happy in my job, if my home life's okay, okay, just keep doing what you're doing. You don't have to spend any extra time on that. But if you've got other areas that are not doing well, maybe your spiritual life is kind of off course, and you are a spiritual person. You maybe you grew up in a particular religious domination in your home, and that's kind of gotten away from you. Maybe that's something you decide to try to work on as a means of balancing out your whole life.
So these healthy relationships that we're talking about then have nothing really to do centrally with your specific type of business. They're outside influences, if you will, right? Maybe that might affect your business.
Absolutely, because when I work with a client, I'm working with that individual to help them figure out what they need to either start doing or stop doing that's going to affect a better outcome in the business that they run. Because you guys know, I mean, as you go, so goes your business. The owner of the business puts a footprint on the way the business operates, and that's kind of how it works. So, I don't really deal with people outside the business owner unless those relationships are kind of taxing the business owner's ability to stay focused, to stay positive, to stay on the business.
Well, then what is it that you can do for somebody if you say, for example, hey, Joe, this is influencing you and your ability to be successful in your business, this outside relationship issue. Once you point that out, how can you go forward as a coach? It's really up to them, right, to correct that problem before you can do anything further with them, right? Wouldn't that make sense?
It is. But what I have to help them with up front is becoming aware of the fact that those relationships may be putting a drag on them. Here's a good example, because I know one of the relationship criteria in the article that Rick gave us was friends. Okay, your circle of friends, your peers, things like that. If I'm working with a client and part of the issue that they're having is that their mindset is not good. They're not thinking proactively. They're not thinking positively. They're not thinking in a can-do frame of mind. Sometimes we'll take a look at, okay, who are you touching during any given day or week that either brings you energy or sucks energy out of you? And that starts giving way to, well, who are you associating with? Who are your close friends? If you had a situation and you needed somebody to give you really, really candid feedback, to really let you know what was right and what was wrong, could you go to any one of these people with any kind of assurity and trust that they would be honest with you? Mm-hmm. And if you answer that and say, well, I typically don't talk to them about that kind of stuff, then okay, that kind of gives me an idea as to how you've positioned those folks. So you have to really take a look at, are you surrounding yourself? Who was the guy that said that? Was that Jim Collins or Rohn or one of those guys? Basically said that your income is the average of the 5 closest friends you hang out with.
Yeah, I think it was Jim Rohn.
Yeah. So what does that tell you? It tells you that friendships are highly influential in terms of the risk you decide to take, the decisions you make about how far and how fast and how aggressive you want to get, running or growing your business. And if nobody else is in that same sphere as you are, then they might not be intentionally doing it, but they're kind of holding you back.
Yeah, so in other words, you can point that out to somebody and say, hey, listen, maybe these are the appropriate individuals, these types of people who have these kinds of characteristics are who you should be hanging out with, because that's going to rub off on your business.
Yes, and here's what I've learned from a lot of years of doing this. Number one, it's inappropriate of me, and number two, it's very difficult to tell somebody, okay, your friends aren't serving you well. They're not there to really support you and encourage you to achieve what you want, so you need to get rid of your friends. Okay.
Well, but here that's an interesting.
Hear that well.
But that's an interesting point, Steve, because I did in my younger career, I did some real estate investing, and I studied with somebody who spoke about the same types of principles and philosophies. And the way it was tactfully done is to take you aside and say, this is what you want to accomplish, and perhaps these are the types of individuals that you want to be associated with in your business, as opposed to saying get rid of all your buddies and your friends. For business purposes, these are the kind of people you should really be learning from. And I think if it's done in a tactful way, I think it can be done.
Okay, and so yes, you're exactly right. The best way to do it is to help the individual define who it is they should be looking to make connections with,
right?
And then encourage them as part of their weekly tasks of things that they're going to go out and do, to start going to networking events.
Right.
Going to places where they can meet people who might be very professional, who might be very experienced, very knowledgeable, very successful. And once they start getting a feel of, wow, there's other people out here that can help me become better at what I do, they will, over time, if they keep doing it, they will start replacing the folks that are not serving them well with the ones who might.
Is that the area that you find to be, well, I guess the question would be, is there an area that on this graph that you find to be the most prevalent when it comes to identifying these types of business relationship problems?
It's usually the ones, it's the romance relationships, you and your spouse. And it's also family relationships when it comes to kids. And the reason is because those are highly emotional areas. You've got strong ties to each one of the people in those groups. Now, here's where it really has an impact on the business. Let's say, Bill, that in your law practice, let's say your wife is one of your partners. You guys are partners in a law practice. So now the relationship you guys have takes on two different appearances. It's your personal life at home, and it's your professional life at work. The problem is many people don't know how to define that and keep it separate as much as possible. There's no way to perfectly separate it, but to separate it from a standpoint where each side doesn't affect or work on the other side negatively.
Yeah, I think of that, and you may remember the name, Steve. I think of those people that the pundits you see on the news all the time. Remember the old bald-headed guy who's way to the left, and his wife is way to the right, and they got married, and somehow they've been married for years. Yes,
and that is a very, very unusual connection. Okay, what I find most times is when a husband and wife get into business together, all of the personal stuff that happened at home tends to leak into the business. They have a very difficult time shutting the door on that, going into business, operating as two professionals in pursuit of a common goal, and all the personal trash kind of leaks into the business. So that's an area where your business can suffer mightily if you have a lot of home issues, whether your spouse is involved in your business or not, because inevitably you're going to bring those things into the business, and if they're serious enough, you're going to get distracted, and your employees are going to figure it out, and some of your close clients are going to start noticing. So yeah, it can have a problem.
For all of you out there who are wondering, my wife is not a lawyer, and she's not involved in my business, so I don't have that issue does not come to bear for me. But I would. This almost seems to me like this takes place on two levels. One, you have the highly emotionally charged relationship, like you mentioned, spouse, maybe girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it may be, children. But then you have almost on a secondary level, you have that who you're hanging out with and how that influences how you do business. It's almost like there are certain, I haven't seen this graph of yours, but I would be willing to bet, tell me if I'm wrong, that there is, it's like almost like a hierarchy. There's some that are more they're going to affect the business much more quickly and in a much more devastating way perhaps than others would.
Yeah, they will, and I tend to look at the hierarchy as, and again, this just depends on the gravity of each one. But either your home life and your spousal life is going to start off and be the most important, and then your business. Say you have a business partner, you work with a couple of people closely. That's going to be right next to it. That's going to be probably number 2 in line. Sometimes it actually ends up going this way, depending on how the business owner chooses to handle, the personal stuff. But you have those two at the top. The next one you have is the community that your colleagues, your friends, things like that. And what affects that is the size. Okay? people that have large networks, large community of friends can usually pick and choose where they spend their time and how much they spend with each person, okay, with each group. People that have very, very tight but very small networks, they're a little more constricted. So if they're having issues with some of those people, it's not like they can go off and spend some time with another group they haven't seen in a while. Those are the people they've made relationships with, and there isn't anybody else.
Yeah. Now, when you're working with somebody, and they, you advise them of, let's say we're picking out 2-3 of these things, and they all happen to be taking place at once, which would be the worst case scenario. You're telling somebody really that they have to correct something that's not within your direct ability or control as a consultant or a coach to remedy. So what do you do at that point? Do you just say, hey, I can't help you until you straighten these things out, or do you move forward and make because I got to imagine if you're moving forward in the face of that, your job's a lot harder.
And I can give you a perfect example of this. About a week and a half ago, I got called by a business person, and she needed someone to help her kind of realign her business and get motivated to get back into it and work it hard and do something with it. She had gotten off track, and her head kind of has gotten away from her a bit. And so as we sat and talked, what came to the surface was she had just gotten off of a devastating relationship breakup. And she had a close person in her family had passed away, so she had just a number of things that would cause anybody to really start questioning what they're doing and things like that. And so after listening to this and kind of really drilling it down for her and giving her the feedback she came for, I told her, I said, I'm not really going to be able to do right by you and help you with the professional side of what you're trying to accomplish until you take care of the personal stuff. So I said, I can't recommend anybody right here and now, but I'm sure, she was a faith-based person. I said, go to your church, find someone you can talk to, a minister, a therapist, or something like that. Get this stuff reconciled and put it in its proper place. And then when you're at that point where you can handle it, you can recognize it, it's history, and you don't have to worry about, thinking about it every night when you go to bed, then come back to me, and then we'll talk about how to work on your business. So I stay away from those. I mean, I'll try to help direct people so they can get the help they need, but I'm not qualified for that. I don't have any license or education or background. So if it goes deep into that area of a person's personal life, they need to find something else to remedy that before I can come help them with their business. Because if they don't, what's going to happen is I'm going to be competing against their mindset. And that mindset's heavily rooted in disappointment and feelings of doubt about themselves as individuals. I can't compete with that. That's not where I operate.
Yeah, I could understand that. Well, I mean, this is very, very interesting. There's almost a hint of psychology about this whole thing. Obviously, in the background, you have these psychological, subconscious things going on sometimes that don't come to the forefront necessarily for the person who has the business. And sometimes it takes an objective third party to point that out, because somebody could be having some of these problems. Let's take the relationship problem that we were just mentioning a minute ago about a wife or a spouse or a boyfriend, girlfriend. You're consciously aware of that, but you may not be aware, you're aware of that problem in the relationship, but you may not be consciously aware of just how much it's affecting your business. And
yes.
And perhaps when you bring it to their attention, the hope is, I would imagine, that they say, you're right, I'm going to take steps to correct this. Or if they're strong-willed enough, they're going to say, I've now identified that. I'm not going to let it interfere with moving my business forward and making it prosperous.
And Bill, most of the time, the best thing you can hope for is to help somebody become really aware that a certain relationship in their life is dragging them down or is not serving them well. They're preoccupied with it, and get them to recognize that. Get them to own the fact that that's happening, so that they're willing to address it. Sometimes, depending on what it is, it could take a while, maybe even longer than the coaching engagement I have with them. But the whole idea is to address it and to start something which will put you in a position of feeling like you can understand it and control it, or find a solution for it, maybe with another third party. But while that's going on, then at least you have the peace of mind that you're dealing with it. Then it can still be going on, but if you're dealing with it and you feel like progress is being made, now you're freed up to really think about how to get back into the business, because you don't have that thing just gnawing at the back of your head all the time.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's very astute of you to be able to do that with a client that you recognize as problems going on, because I think the kiss of death could be a situation where they spiral out of control because now they're talking to more friends and family about the stuff that they're going through that aren't doing any help. They're not moving them into positive mindset, and that can be a bad spiral out of control situation that could ultimately kill their business. And so, I like your approach to just be able to stand back and not offer a Band-Aid solution, but listen, you need professional help. You need to go and talk to somebody who's more qualified than yourself, and then I'll come and help you, right?
Well, you touched on something, Rick, that I gave a presentation, I don't know, maybe a little over a year ago, and it was on certain things that you can do as a professional to achieve a certain level of excellence in your life. And one of the points in that was, be careful about how many people you seek advice from. And to your point, if you're really struggling with an issue that might be family driven, kid wise, spouse, or even a business owner that you're in business with and you're not having a good time with, there's a tendency for people to seek out advice from those that they trust, those that they think will give. But the problem is they go seeking advice from 8 or 10 or 12 people. Guess how many different opinions you get?
And the flip side,
you get 8 or 10 or 12 different opinions. What do you do with all that?
Yeah, and the flip side of this too is it brings to bear the fact that you have to recognize that, hey, guess what? You may have employees in your business with these similar problems, and you have to be sensitive to those problems. You have to know how to treat them. You have to maintain a relationship with them. So we can say if you're having some issues, guess what happens if you run into an employee who are having similar issues? But let's say you're okay. Let's focus just for a second on the employee. You've got to be very, very careful how you treat these employees who might have these issues, but more importantly, you got to document and meet with them and document everything that takes place with another person in the room. And as I've said before, put it in that drop file, because if it ever becomes an issue at some point, you can say you were compassionate, you tried to discuss it with them, but that they took no offering of advice and didn't remedy the problem. So pointing it out and being objective is one thing, but then really, whether we're talking about a business owner or an employee, Steve, it's up to them to pick up the ball and run with it.
It is, and that's where the difficulty can be. In fact, I was just having this conversation with some folks I was eating lunch with yesterday, and I told them, I said, the most difficult part of working with any given client is usually in the first 2 to 3 sessions, because once the client becomes aware of certain things that might not be working for them or things they should be doing, the hard part is to get them to own it, to get them to recognize that they are the ones in the driver's seat in terms of the resolution. So what you're talking about, if you're in a business and you've got an employee that's got some issues that's affecting their job, their performance, you've got to be astute enough to be able to recognize that it may not be a fact that they don't know what they're doing. It may not be that they don't have the skill or the background or the experience. It may be that there's something else in their head that's diverting their attention. And you've got to be able to pull them aside and sit down and say, look, I'm here to help, but I have to know what's going on, because right now what I'm seeing is you're not performing at the level that I think you should be able to.
Yeah.
And you have to have a conversation with them.
And it's going to be even more difficult, of course, if you've got similar issues going on that that you haven't resolved. So there's a lot to business, boy. There really is. We learn more and more about that every day that are behind the scenes issues that aren't necessarily something you would think of. And that's why you have a lawyer on your team. That's why you have a consultant like Steve and Rick. That's why you have people you speak to, a CPA. You need these kinds of people on your team so you can get this objective advice, not just from a professional point of view, but also, if you develop a relationship, since we're talking about relationships on this show, you develop a relationship, and that person is going to be more than just a professional. They're going to be able to take you aside and point out some things that you might not necessarily get a bill in the mail for. So business relationships are very, very important in so many different ways. I think it's a great topic today.
Well, just remember this, that if you have a relation, and here's another real quick example. I'm working with a couple of business partners that have a law firm, not in this area, and they've had a real difficult time. They've worked together for a while, but they have a real difficult time scheduling time to sit down and talk about the business that they're both joined into. And so it's been a little bit of a struggle getting them to recognize that time is just as important as them going to a client or going to court and representing a client, because they're working on the business at that point.
That's our life's blood.
Yeah, if they're not willing to work on and refine and hone the relationship between themselves, then it's, the whole business is going to be in jeopardy. Because Bill, I mean, of all the business structures and types that people can come up with, partnerships have the highest degree of failure of any business model out there, and it's for that reason. They don't have a meeting of the minds. They don't feel like they can totally trust each other. They tend not to talk about things, routinely, and so as a result, fear and suspicion and all this other kind of stuff leaks in, and then they're at each other's throat.
Yeah, so much of that is how you have it, how you have it comprised, how you have who's running the business, who makes the decisions, how you have all that laid out. Hopefully you have an agreement. But partnerships, if not formed into a specific entity, and there are different entities partnerships can be, if it's just a plain old partnership and nothing else without any formalization, you're asking for some big problems. I don't know what that was. What was that? One of our sound machines in the background just caved in.
No,
but anyway, I think all of these points are so relevant and so important. I think it's been a great topic and a great show today. And I want to just take a minute to let everybody know where they can get a hold of us. Rick's got his new business, Captivate 365 LLC. Steve's got Growth Source Coaching, and I've got WFB Legal Consulting Incorporated. And we can all be contacted through all of the social media sites, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. Just punch in our names individually, our business names individually, or punch in Bottle Business Sense Show. You'll come up with all kinds of sites and information where you can get a hold of us, and hopefully we can be some help to you. Here we are taping this show, by the way, for a Tuesday show on Good Friday, and that just goes to show you that we are providing you everything you need to help you with your business, even on one of the holiest of days there is, right? So we're dedicated. Right, guys?
Well, our contact information also, folks, is right below this video. So it's all underneath, emails, phone numbers, as well as our websites. So take a look at that.
Fantastic.
Well, I think we probably chewed that conversation up pretty well. So yeah, I just leave everybody with the idea that relationships, you need to have your finger on the pulse of your relationships. And if you think something is going awry, don't wait to have a conversation to find out, just check in, find out how it's going.
Right.
Because the longer you wait, that's what I tell them, the longer you wait, the more expensive the solution becomes.
Well, hopefully, everyone, you've enjoyed the show and gotten something out of it, as we hope you do each week. We'll see you back here next time, same place, same station, as they say. We here at the Bottle Business Sense Show wish you a happy Easter, and we'll see you next week. Right, guys?
All right, take care, guys. Have a good Easter break.
You guys too. Take care.